Welcome back to the Celtic Way and the Grand Old Team, episode 8. We're still alive, we're still going strong. We've got to 8 episodes. Everyone's a milestone. I'm Tony Haggerty, at Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle, and or X handle, whatever they call it this week. And I'm joined by, as always, the wonderful Kevin McKenna. Kevin, how are you?
Aye, it's been a good week, Tony.
Oh,
Very special.
It has indeed. And if you look at the strapline and the title, it needs no explanation. Love Street 1986 and all that, when Celtic won the 1985-86 title under David Hay, one of the sweetest titles in Celtic's history, one of the least expected titles of Celtic's history, and myself and Kevin, that'll be our reference point for the next however we like to wax lyrical or talk about said things. Now, Kevin, this, you have to say, this particular season, Hearts, who ended up runners-up in both the league and the Scottish Cup, what a season they had, what a run they went on. Absolutely incredible.
I remember I was actually probably just about every game that season. Might have missed one or two. And we played Hearts 4 times, and we drew 3 and were beaten once, I think. I think we played them in the opening match, and it was at Tynecastle, and we got a draw due to a trademark last minute first time shot by Paul McStay. I think it was 1 each at Tynecastle. They beat us 1-0 at Parkhead, and we drew the other 2.
Yeah.
They were, Hearts were, if Hearts had won the league, there's not a single Celtic fan that would have begrudged them it. They were, over the course of the season, they'd been amazing until that last day defeat by Dundee. I think they'd gone 30 odd games without defeat. They had a great team. I mean, it was a really, really special Hearts team. We John Robertson, Eamon Bannon, the big guys at Berry.
Yeah, Neil Berry.
And we John Cahoon. We went into that last game. I'd gone along. Hearts just needed the draw. Celtic had a so-so season. We'd been knocked out both cups at the quarter-final stage, won by Hibs, Easter Road, 4-3.
Yeah.
And I think Hibs put us out the League
and the
Cup.
Other one, well. Yeah, they put them out the League Cup on penalties after a 4-8 draw.
Yeah.
2 unbelievable games at Easter Road in the Cup against Hibs.
And in Europe, we had to play Atletico Madrid. And it was 85-86. So it was the season after Rapid. So we were playing Atletico, our home game behind closed doors, but we'd got a really good 1-1 draw in Madrid. In the first leg, Maurice Johnson scored a belter. But we had to play the second leg behind closed doors and get beaten 2-1.
I mean, that season, it was full of ups and downs, but they had a particularly black end of October, getting into November. They played a sequence of games at home against Dundee United, pummeled 3-0, went to Pittodrie.
I was there.
Pummeled 4-1, and then went to Ibrox and lost 3-0, and then get back in the horse middle of November by beating Clydebank. But, I mean, that tells you yourself, Kevin, that was nowhere near title winning for them.
No.
Somehow they got to the last 8 games and they were hanging in there, weren't they? And they had to reel off 8 victories in order to win the title, and hope that Hearts lost on the last day to Dundee, and Celtic had to win by 4 clear against St Mirren at Love Street. So that's the scenario here. Celtic are up and down. Davy, his team, show signs during the season where they're decent, and then other times when they're bang average.
We had, we'd have been looking at that sequence of results. We weren't actually thinking we need to win these last 8 games because we were significantly behind Hearts.
Yeah.
Even if we had won those 8 games, no one was seriously thinking that Hearts would drop that many points. But there was a turning point for us, I think, for the team. And it was a game before those last 8 games. We played Rangers at Ibrox.
4 each.
And we drew 4 each. And what a game. Played in a monsoon. Tommy Burns was just imperious.
First ever Rangers game at Ibrox, Kevin. The first
what
one.
A game.
Oh, great.
We could have, we had a chance to win it. They had a chance to win it. And in the end, we were quite happy with the 4-4 draw. And that sort of said to me, they've got, they've come through adversity here.
Because that particular game, they were 2-0 up, 3-1 up, down to 10 men, 4-3 down, and then Murdo McLeod produced a trademark
belter
special for 4 each.
Tommy Burns scored a belter that game as well.
Make it 3-1, yeah.
So then we're going into these last 8 games, and to be frank, the odds against us winning 8 games in the trot were significant because we just weren't anywhere near that form.
Yeah.
The team wasn't really settled. It played in fits and starts. It was vulnerable. I do remember that season as being the breakthrough season for Derek White. I think he made his debut that season as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
17. I mean, 17, you don't usually see okay, there's been very gifted young players that various teams have turned up. But you would very rarely put a 17-year-old right in the heart of a defence. You maybe put him in the midfield. You might say a 17-year-old midfielder or winger because there's plenty other they're not going to be under a great deal of pressure to deliver. They can bed themselves in. They're playing with other people, but when you're the central defender, after the goalkeeper, you're the last line of defence. And as soon as you put a 17-year-old in the centre of defence, you're basically inviting the opposition to target him.
Yeah.
No matter how good that young player is, and no matter how many rave reviews he's had playing for the reserves or the age groups, every team you're playing against is going to target. Going to target you because you're 17.
See what you're made of.
And he was tremendous. It was the first time in years I think we had a central defender who had real pace because he had good pace, and he could he chipped in with some goals. Yeah. That's the only other memorable thing about that. I mean, McClare. I mean, with a great attack, you'd McClare, you'd Maurice Johnston. Behind them, you've got Burns and McLeod. I've got to give a special mention to wee Owen Archdeacon. Mm-hmm. So Owen Archdeacon probably didn't play as often for Celtic as we once thought he might have because he had, coming through the youth ranks. He was the lad who was most likely to do well. Amazing ball skills, quick, intelligent, down the left, could score goals. His name kept popping up in reports of, Celtic's young players. It just didn't quite happen for him over the course of his senior career at Celtic. He was a lovely lad. It's a lovely, lovely lad, Owen Archdeacon. I think he was from the Greenock area. But I think it was just one of those situations, big Celtic family, big expectations, and it was just a bit beyond them. But see, there were that 85-86 season, he was good for us, and he was very, very good in that game, the 5-0 game at Love Street.
Yeah, he was also good in the 4-each game as well.
He was. He did a really good season, and only going to have one memorable season.
Might as well make it that one.
Might as well be that one. So Leone, as he was known, will always have a special place in my heart because of his displays in that season of all seasons.
Yeah, and it's everything else that winning Celtic in times of adversity, the kind of never say die attitude, spirit, it's all encompassed in that Love Street 86 team, because all the supporters that went along, Kevin, they went there not thinking they were going to see a title winning team. They were going there just to cheer the boys on, as you do, and say thanks for your efforts for the season. We'll see you again next season. Because I don't think anybody thought that they were going to win the title that day when they turned up at Love Street. Because Hearts were, they were on a tremendous run, and you just didn't see them slipping. I think the week before they'd gone to Tannadice and they'd dismantled Dundee United, didn't they?
Yes.
John McLean's Dundee United, John Robertson's absolute screamer.
That was the game we thought, if they're going to slip up.
Yeah, Tannadice was the one.
It's going to be Tannadice. And I remember watching the highlights that night, and they did dismantle Dundee United, and I thought, well, that's it.
Game over.
We had so I was due to get married a couple of months after it was in July, and so we just bought our first flat in Govan Hill. Needed a lot of work done, as they say. And so I had decided just to spend that Saturday just doing some decorating. And it wasn't a very pleasant day. And then my pal Billy phoned up and said, I just fancy going down. We've been through thick and thin all season. Why not? And I'll look for any excuse to get out of decorate because
meet your pal.
Because dear oh dear. So down we went, and incredible, great atmosphere. A lot of people who were, it's one of those ones where if you had £1 for everyone who said they were there, they'd have sold out the San Siro,
I spoke to Brian McClare the other week, did a big interview with him, and he said the very same thing. He said that everybody that he's ever met in his life as a Celtic supporter told them that they were there at Love Street. And he said if that was the case, it was a world record crowd. I think only the Pope and Bella Houston played to more people at an event in Scotland, he said, So
there was still a decent crowd. Love Street in those days, the Celtic end, it was quite big, and we'd half the enclosure. And I also noticed there was a few fans had getting in at the St Mirren end at the other side of the park. But we just turned it on in that first half. 4-0, and we're talking here about a St Mirren team. We're not talking about a team that was relegation fodder. This is a St Mirren team that would win the Scottish Cup the following season.
And there were regular participants in European football at that level. We're finishing 4th and 5th in the table and getting into the UEFA Cup. So they played Feyenoord around that time as well, didn't they?
Yeah, we do.
At Love Street, and they were always regular European participants.
It was that era of the kind of early to probably 81 from the Fergie era. He was first manager there, and then he had Alec Miller, Ricky McFarlane. Really good managers. Obviously knew what they were doing. Some cracking players. McGarvey, Frank McDougall, Billy Stark, Billy Abercrombie. Dougie Song, Hughie Somner, hard seasoned professionals, big Scanlon.
Yeah.
They
Tony Fitzpatrick as well. Yeah.
And, they throughout the 80s, they just
Early Macca.
Early Frank Mack. Well, 82. Yeah, he played against us in the 3-0 game at Parkhead when we won the league in 82. So, they were more than...
Yeah, Frank McDougall was excellent.
They were more than capable of turning anybody over at Love Street. But we just turned it on that first half. But even then, you're thinking, Hearts need a draw. They'll get a draw.
Well, it pains me greatly to say, Kevin, that I wasn't there. I was 13. I would be 14 in the July. And myself and my brother used to watch my father's team. He ran an amateur team, highly successful amateur team called Millerfield. And all the team were Celtic and Rangers supporters and came from the Marnock and the Brigton area. So I would go and watch them every Saturday, and we would go to every kind of midweek game. But my brother, I don't know if my brother had a spider sense that kicked in, but he was adamant he was going to Love Street. And because I was 13, I asked to go, but my brother would be like a year and a bit older, so he'd be 15. And I don't think he wanted the kind of hassle of being a babysitting me. I think he wanted to go and maybe have a wee carry out, unbeknownst to my father. And so he was like, I'm going to go to Love Street. And I said, okay. Well, I went with my father because I think his team are going to clinch the league that day as well. So I went there. He went to Love Street. He's never let me forget it ever since. But I was at the Tom Roderick Invincible Hampden final and he wasn't. So it was kind of like, for every yin, there's a yang, all that kind of stuff. But he went because he tells me to this day he believed that Celtic were going to win the league, but I don't believe that there was a fan that actually surely deep down thought Hearts were going to blow it.
No.
Dens Park of all places. No. And you can be as optimistic as you can be. But he was there, so there was a family representative there. And I'm always glad that he was there. I kind of shed the jealousy element of it a long time ago. But as you say, Celtic cheated. That first half was some exhibition football. In the lime green strip on a horrible day, and Brian McClare and Maurice Johnson and Paul McStay are all on the score sheet in the first half. As it ends 5-0, Maurice Johnson gets 2, Brian McClare gets 2, Paul McStay gets a goal, and Archdeacon runs riot down the left flank. But I think it's the third goal, isn't it? The third goal.
The one that starts with the wee overhead kick by Danny.
By the world-class fullback that is Daniel Fergus. No surname required.
It was just one touch football all the way down that right-hand side, wasn't it?
Yeah. And McStay's involved, McClare's involved, and then Maurice Johnson puts it away with one touch. And regardless of how you feel about the scorer and what happened in the years that since followed, it's still a wonderful football goal. It doesn't matter what level of football that's scored. It's a brilliant, and it's such a Celtic goal, isn't it? Let's be honest.
I'll never tire of watching it. It just pops up every so often on YouTube or Twitter. And then, of course, younger fans. See, we had we're of a generation that there was an element to watching football then which could be quite joyous, which unfortunately has passed. Will never ever happen again, and you had to experience it to be there. And it's when you're waiting for news of closest rivals. And so there was little transistor radios which are about that size, and quite a few people would have them because it wasn't even just to listen to the results as they're coming in from your rivals. It was a lot of them. It was also for news of the horse racing, but also at that time the official programs of publications in order. club's official programs in order to, to give it an extra impetus to make you maybe want to buy the official club program. The halftime results, they would, the stadiums wouldn't put them as Aberdeen 0, Motherwell 0. It would be
game A.
And you're looking at it and going, the hell does this all mean? And of course, you've got to buy the program, because then the program tells you
corresponding game,
all the corresponding games. It was just so old school. And so,
but you know what, the younger fans will never know, as you say, that joyous moment of finding out that, Forfar are losing to Brecon 2-0 at Glebe Park. Game G on your programme.
Yeah. So there was so the magic then was that there had been previous occasions when it was always good, right? We'd experienced this when you're a Parkhead, Celtic are winning, Rangers are away to Motherwell, and you would find out if Rangers were losing, or Motherwell had scored, you would hear this rumble starting low down. Would quite often be the jungle. Maybe I'm just saying that because of my romantic kind of affiliation to the old jungle. But it would start.
You say that you hear a rumble in the jungle. You just said
that. A wee rumble in the jungle, and it would just, and you. So there'd be a minor eruption of joy, and people were alive to it and going, "Oh, does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean, Rangers opponents, let's say Motherwell, have scored?" Then it would die down, so it might have been nothing, and then there was a few chancers who would just, if it had been a boring game, or they were howling with a bevy, they would start it themselves just for a laugh. Usually get pummeled, right? And so there was always those little joys, like when we found out Rangers opponents had scored, especially if it was a last minute game and everybody knew that it was eeksy peeksy at Ibrox, whatever. And then the opposition scored, and the roar would go around the ground, and it would act as an impetus. I've been at 2 or 3 games where we're struggling. We're not playing well. We might be a goal up. We're maybe drawing. And then there's the muffled roar that starts, then the absolute eruption of the roar, which tells you Rangers are a goal down. And it would transmit onto the field. And the Celtic players would get a real lift. You've seen it happen. But the apotheosis of that, like the absolute zenith, was Love Street, because by this time we've gone 5 goals up, and there's that footage of, is it Jim Stewart?
Yeah.
In the goal. The roar starts from behind his goal for me and my pal Billy were. And we were, I've actually spotted myself as a 22-year-old in that crowd. And I can remember a wee guy just down to our right who's got the transistor on, and he's suddenly jumping about, and like within seconds it just caught fire.
Yeah.
Right round the whole terrace. And then everyone's singing and everyone's jumping. But I'm looking at the time. So Dundee are a goal up, Hearts need to draw, but there's still 7 minutes to go. And I'm going, it's too early, it's still Hearts aren't going to get beat, I mean, after all the great displays they'd had, the unbeaten against us, they've just hammered Dundee United at Tannadice. They'll get a goal. And then it happened again. It was just singing and dancing.
There's the apocryphal tale that when Kidd had scored, the Ibrox leapt to its feet because they thought it was Walter Kidd.
I hadn't heard that.
I don't know how true that is, but seemingly there was, and I've read it in a few places. I don't know if any Rangers fan has confirmed it to me or would confirm it to me, because bearing in mind this is the pre-Souness era of Rangers, when they were rank rotten for about 8-9 years and didn't win the title. And but there's too many people have recorded it in black and white as fact. So I'm assuming that did happen, and the transistor radio, kids scored. It's like
this happened. Something similar happened in the 1971 League Cup final, where we got beat 4-1 by Thistle.
Yeah,
Thistle were 4-0 up at half time. So Rangers were playing that day at Ibrox. And I've got this from the mouth of two Rangers fans who were at Ibrox on the day that we were getting hammered 4-0 at half time by the Jags. And there were taxis getting hailed at half time at Ibrox to Hampden because it was pay at the gate.
Yeah.
The crowd at Hampden that day was about 70. Was it 70,000? So, you didn't have to be all ticket affairs.
I've seen this before, but Frank Boff on the video printer in Grandstand, it's a Scottish League Cup final day. It's at Hampden Park, and it flashed up Celtic 0, Partick Thistle 4. And Frank Boff said, seems to be some mistake with the video printer. We'll get you the correct result as soon as we know it. And it's there, it's in the archive, you can see it. And then I think he has to come back on and say, actually, bit of a shock in the Scottish League Cup final that Partick Thistle were winning 4-0. And even that, Arthur surpasses himself in that commentary. He's talked about Jimmy Bone walking the ball into the net, and I can't believe it. It's 4-0 for Partick Thistle. And anybody can believe it. Which led to that great clip from Steen saying that he always drummed it into his players that they could lose the next game. Because he was always he was haunted by Partick Thistle, but I think Celtic were so the overwhelming favourites for that it was a shocker of all shockers.
It was incredible. My dad took me to that game.
Yeah.
My first ever cup final. I was 7.
Shooing, or it should have been.
And he's thinking, this is a safe game to go, to take my 7-year-old son to a big cup final because we're going to skate it. There'll be no sense of jeopardy, no tension, and therefore probably not very much swearing on the terraces. And at 4-0 at half time, I'm in tears. I want to go home. and as many people around us were, and my dad, who's just far too fair-minded for his own good at times, turned to me and said, "Nope, I've been here watching us beat Leeds United last year. I've seen us win cups here. I've seen us dismantle other clubs, and we're going to stay. We're going to stay." And he insisted in applauding Thistle.
Good on him.
And I was in tears, first cup final, and we get our arses handed to us by the Harry Rags.
And if you watch that footage, as I've said, the commentary's just brilliant. I think Jimmy Bone scores, doesn't he?
Jimmy Bone, Dennis McQuaid.
Yeah, Dennis McQuaid.
Bobby Laurie.
Yeah. But when Jimmy Bone scores, Arthur, brilliant, just says, "And Bone!" He literally walks the ball into the net. It's 4-0.
He did literally walk the ball into the net.
It's just such the incredulity in his voice. He just can't even believe what's happening.
And it was, and I know it's getting a bit off topic here because we're talking about Love Sheep, but 4 days later, we're playing Partick Thistle at Firhill in the league. We beat them 5-1. What's going on? And also Celtic put out their full squad. This was a team which, most of them had played against Feyenoord in the European Cup final the previous year, beating Leeds United home and away. There weren't any. Jock Steen wasn't saying, "Now it's only Thistle in the final. We're going to beat them. We'll stick a couple of youngsters in." It was a full fat squad, including Kenny Dalglish.
Yeah, who had an uncanny knack of scoring in cup finals at Celtic lost.
Aye.
Frightening.
77, Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Hibs 72, Thistle 71.
So
Rangers 73.
Yeah. But that's another argument or story altogether. But yeah, I mean, I love the rabbit holes that we go down when we do this. It's great, but we are talking about Love Street 86. Goodness knows how we got on this on 71, but it doesn't really matter. We'll segue back to 86, but you just said that there's that wonderful Scott Sport footage of the crowd jumping about and going mental because some wee guys heard on the radio, and Jim Stewart's got the ball in his hand, ex-Rangers goalkeeper. He looks absolutely crestfallen. And Albert Kidd's open to scoring, and then he scores the second one. And Kidd, who professes to be a Celtic supporter, and it's utter bedlam because Celtic know they've won the title. Hearts ain't coming back from 2-0 down with minutes to go. And it just shattered them. I mean, in every sense, and no pun intended, but it did. It broke their hearts, didn't it? Because they just couldn't lift themselves for the Scottish Cup final the following week in Aberdeen.
I mean, oddly enough, I was hoping they would beat Aberdeen in the cup final the following week. I really was, because I just thought they deserve it. They deserve it.
But when in that interview with Brian McClare, he said something to me, and you'll probably agree with us because you were probably there, but Brian McClare said he didn't think that Celtic would win the title until, in that sandwiched in between those 8 games, was a 1-0 win at Pittodrie.
That's right. I was there.
Scored. And Brian McClare said it's the first time that the players thought, if you keep hanging in here, we just need to keep winning games, we might do it. But he said he didn't believe it was possible until they won that tight one. He said, because we used to go to Pittodrie and get...
We used to get... Oh, we get spanked regularly at Pittodrie. You know, victories at Pittodrie in the 80s were very, very few and far between. And it wasn't just in the Ferguson era, even after he'd gone. There was, you know, the 88, 89, we struggled a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember getting up to that game. And we were just overjoyed that we'd actually seen Celtic win at Pittodrie.
Yeah.
And actually, I think from memory there was about 3 or 4 games to go.
There was 4 games.
And we never lost a goal. Lost a goal from then until the end of the season.
That's right, because they beat Ireland 2-0, they beat Dundee 2-0, they beat Motherwell 2-0, and then they beat St Mirren 5-0 to win the title. So
and I remember Hearts dropping points, I think, at either Fir Park or Clyde. No, I think Clydebank took a draw off them. An unlikely draw off them.
Because Hearts could have won the title at Fir Park the night Celtic played them at Fir Park.
And
Celtic won 2-0.
And I think
if they hadn't have won, Hearts could have won the title.
Yeah.
It's 2 points for a win back then, isn't it? So
you were beginning to detect that as Celtic were racking up the wins, Hearts are getting a little bit more nervous. But as I said before, when they beat Dundee United at Tannadice, I'm thinking, well, it's all over.
Yeah.
After the game, of course, I mean, in normal circumstances, we'd have just gone out and partied back into town, just got as much money as you could together, and that would have been you till the ditch. But because I was getting married a couple of months later, and not thinking that we'd a chance of winning, in fact, not even planning to go to the game, I'd said to my beautiful intended that we would have a quiet drink that evening in Cumbernauld, where she lived, just to kind of discuss plans for the wedding. I'd said I'd made this arrangement, not thinking I'm going to the game, and B, even if I'm going to the game, it's not going to happen. So it will be a quiet night. And of course, it's everyone's given it Yahoo. And normally, so would I have. It would have been straight up to one of the university unions that have been into the town to Panama Jacks, Henry Africas, which for the Cardinal Follies.
To have a kick at ball.
Yeah, kick a right good kick at the ball, and then kebab, and stumble home. But I thought, I can this isn't going to bode well if I, her, her parents. I was not exactly. Let's put it this way: I wasn't exactly their number one choice, number two, number three, or number four choice for their beautiful, intelligent daughter. So I thought, I've got to basically be, I've got to be the angel between now and July, and it would not have been good me to phone our house. You couldn't just get away with a text, right? You had to basically phone,
yes,
and just say, "Listen, sweetheart, won the title against the odds. I think it's my spiritual duty to celebrate." So there I was, basically hugging a pint lager in a dodgy pub in Cumbernauld Village, and it was quite. I won't name the pub, but it was pretty obvious within 20 minutes. There weren't a lot of Celtic fans in that pub, and probably not had there been for many a long year. The sacrifices you have to make.
Correct. I mean, I always tell my wife, and you'll recognise this, I always quote the famous song, "Celtic were my first love, and they will be my last. Celtic of the future and Celtic of the past."
Indeed.
And, I jest, obviously, but she laughs because I sing it to her, and she kills herself laughing, and she always says, "Yes, I know where I stand in that pecking order." But yeah, as you say, you do things for your football club that
I know.
You tell people who just shake their head. But
in the Hall of Fame, in the Hall of Fame of the football game, there's a name that stands alone.
Yes, correct. And for those that were there, yourself, my brother included, it remains a real cherished title because it was won against all the odds. They overcame adversity, and it just seemed, as I said at the top of the programme, so it's such an unlikely triumph. And, and I think the players that played in that team, they'll all remember it fondly. I know Brian McClare remembers it fondly, and I
was also delighted for David Hay.
Correct.
So David Hay was the manager, and we had he was the manager, arguably at the time of Aberdeen having their greatest ever club. So in '85, previous season, we lost the league, but we beat Dundee United in the cup final.
84, they were runners up and everything, weren't they?
Yeah, 84, Aberdeen won the league. They beat us in extra time in the cup final. We were beaten by Rangers in the League Cup final. 83, when Aberdeen won the Cup Winners' Cup, Dundee United
won the title on the last day.
That was one that we threw. That's another one. God, we threw that one away. So David Hay had taken over in the 82-83 season. So this was his fourth season. Hadn't won the league. Had only won the Scottish Cup. David Hay was just a magnificent Celtic player. Absolute, solid gold man, Prince. Yeah. And wins the league. And it was the last title, I think, before big money comes in and distorts everything.
Yeah.
Because
the Soonest Revolution's about to kick in.
The Soonest Revolution happened at Rangers, but actually under David Hay, my personal, nobody's ever said this out loud, but I think if Celtic hadn't won the league, the board were going to get rid of Hay. But they win the league against all the odds. So, you had, the Celtic can't be seen to sack a manager as one.
Title winning manager, eh?
And actually, see at the beginning of the following season, we didn't spend much money on new players. But right up until Christmas, we'd a great first half of the season.
Was it not 9 weeks ahead at one time?
Yeah, Rangers had 2 or 3 games in hand, but we were comfortably ahead, and then we went to Ibrox in the new year. Rangers scalped us 3-0, or 2-0.
2-0, yeah.
And so David Hay had targeted Stevie Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? Was he at Chelsea? Was he still at St Mirren at the time, or was he at Chelsea by then?
I think he was at Chelsea by then, wasn't he?
So we targeted them, and the kind of the fee that was being talked about was in the region of 250 to 300,000. And he had said, and he was dead right, we need a cultured, experienced central defender with a bit of steel. Because Rangers had bought Terry Butcher, Woods, etc. And according to David Hay and others, Jack McGinn, the then chairman, had said, "Well, if you want Stevie Clark, you're going to have to pay for him yourself."
Yeah.
And I remember vividly. Things you remember. I remember listening to Radio Clyde before that Rangers game at Ibrox, and Kevin Kelly, who was a board member. In fact, Kevin might have been the chairman then. And he's getting asked about why there had been no signings, given how much Rangers had signed, and Kelly kind of saying, if you just want to take a look at the current league placings, that will tell you why we didn't have any major signings. What's the problem here? Rangers scud us 3-0, and we collapse, and they win the league comfortably.
Yeah.
David Hay then gets sacked, and Billy McNeill gets brought in. And much as though we all love Big Billy, and he was, it was just great winning the double in the centenary scene. I'm sure we'll devote a programme to the 87-88 season and all that followed from that. But David Hay wasn't well treated by Celtic. I'm not saying that you can't get rid of a manager. Obviously, he probably had to go. He was let down by the board, who didn't back him up. I think if they had backed him, he'd have won that title.
Good for him for cheating,
but they just didn't do it properly. I think even the dogs in the street knew that they had approached Billy McNeill. The deal was done, and I don't think they covered themselves in glory with the way that they had they'd broken the news to David Hay.
But they had fallen for treating managers and ex-players.
Well, they hadn't treated Billy McNeill well in '83.
Yeah, and
no, '83 Billy McNeill. No, he wasn't getting. That was it. Billy McNeill goes to Manchester City because it finds out that how little he's getting paid.
Yeah,
and also
previously to that, they hadn't treated Jock Steinway at all.
No.
So
they had no class. That old board had
that regime,
no class.
Yeah, but I mean that the great thing about that day is you were talking earlier about the radio. The radio commentary came into its own that day, both on BBC Scotland and Radio Clyde. I think David Francie was a famous name in BBC Radio Scotland, so he was commentating. I'm sure he was at Tannadice, and can't remember who was at Love Street, but they kept going to and fro, and it was the same on Radio Clyde. And it's usually, if you weren't there, you were getting the drama of it unfolding through someone else's eyes, painting pictures. But they really did put on a wonderful show, and they transported you to both grounds. Even though you were listening to the radio. I mean, I was in the minibus on the way back from whatever it was, and my father's team had won the title, so they were all in high spirits, and we were listening to the radio. I'm sure we were listening to BBC Radio Scotland when Albert Kidd scored, And so I'm 13, going on 14, and all the Rangers supporters on the team, and I'm giving it a bit of that. they were telling me, shut it, wait till Souness gets a hold of you, Souness I'm winning, and yada, yada, yada. If only I knew then what I know now. But, and it's probably karma for the way me and my dad were just rubbing it right into the guys, the team that supported Rangers, and the others in the minibus who were Celtic fans. We were just going absolutely tonto because it was so unexpected. But I just remember listening to the radio, and it was the drama came right through the speakers. You know, it was terrific, and they really built it up. The last few minutes were just priceless. It was great, and I think if you go on, I think the BBC archives have got it, or you can go on social media and you can get the last few minutes. I'm sure David Francis commentary still.
You can.
It comes up every now and again because Celtic supporters like to, as they call it, Albert Kid Day, and they always put that kind of.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'd love to hear your opinion of this. Do you? I'm not convinced Albert Kidd really was a Celtic fan. Do you think he was? Do you think he's basically kind of thought, I'm on a good thing here?
Well, he emigrated to Australia, didn't he?
Did he? Because he then became like.
Yeah, he got as far away.
There's loads of Celtic supporters clubs in Australia.
Albert Kidd CSC and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's a terrible thing to say. If somebody says they're a Celtic fan, you can't. Right, I take that back. I'm sure he is a Celtic fan. Sure he is.
It didn't do him any harm, did it?
Who cares? Who cares? Also, see the 2 goals.
They were great.
The 2 goals were absolute belters.
Second one in particular.
This is another thing. So I got to know John Cahoon very well a few years later because I became sports editor at Scotland on Sunday, and we hired John as a columnist. John Cahoon is a very bright, very sharp individual.
Very man, isn't he?
And I'd said to our staff, look, I know papers are going in for ghosted columns by, footballers, current or former footballers, but I said, we're not doing it at Scotland Sunday. We're supposed to be a cut above that, right? If we're getting a current professional footballer and he has to write it himself, and we can give them a bit of coaching, set them off, but I'm not having a ghostwritten column in Scotland on Sunday. And John Cahoon was a great columnist for us. And as we got to know him, I remember him telling me that, we Cahoons with Stirling, big Celtic man, but he was great for Hearts. Legend at Hearts. Played well against us when he was at Hearts.
Mr. Sutter in the Olympic Stadium, which would have sent Hearts.
And he was. He told me. So there was one of the BBC specials years later. I think it was the BBC where it was kind of some of the kind of iconic football teams.
Was it only a game? Was it only the series? Only a game?
Might have been. And so they're interviewing various Hearts players and taking them back to that season where they had everything, and and the reason why they'd chosen that Hearts team because it was arguably the best Hearts team that had ever been since the Con, Bald and Wardhaw era in the late 50s. And our John, he was as he was describing the emotions, like that day at the last day of the season, he was very emotional. He was in tears, and that's when it really struck me. Despite him being a Celtic fan, the amount of emotion, the amount of kind of physical exertion, emotional and physical exertion that you put in to a 34-game long league season, and you've been brilliant, and you've remained unbeaten against Celtic, and then to have it snatched away. I mean, I know it's Hearts, and we don't have a great relationship with Hearts, and they don't like us. But on a human level, when you speak to professional footballers, and you kind of get the odd insight into how much they expend on their profession and how much pressure they're put under by, roasters like me. They don't have to do it for a living.
But the Celtic supporters, as you say, they're unforgiving, and Hearts' sponsor was MITA, wasn't it? MITA.
That's right, yeah.
And the old joke was, might have won the league, might have won the cup. But ended up winning sod all.
That's shocking.
That's terrible, which probably largely explains the relationship that they have with each other now, in terms of the respect or non-existent respect from the two club supporters. But yeah, I remember that being the joke, because people are sharp, aren't they? And that was the long-running joke. But yeah, I can understand that, because you say Colquhoun was another one of those players who played for Celtic, but just it didn't happen for him.
Yeah.
And he was a talented player, but John Colquhoun in that moment is probably thinking, I could have been a Hearts legend. We are minutes away from being the most talked about Hearts team in modern history. They are. And that's hard to, I guess that's hard to live with, isn't it? Or hard to replay in your head as well. And they are one of the most talked about Hearts teams in history, but for all the wrong reasons. And when you're from glory, not so much all the wrong reasons, but
yeah, they had it. They threw it away. There's no two ways about it. They must have nightmares about the way but Beanieksy Peaksy, nip and tuck all the way through the season, and then they just lose out. Fair enough. But the position they were in,
yeah, they should have won.
They just need a point against. Well, there's another aspect to this which I've heard since. Which, first of all, was the one that St Mirren weren't given a toss against us, and they were full of Celtic fans. Well, is that right? What, their goalkeeper, Jim Stewart? They'd had players there. They'd given us a run for their money. I didn't see that. But the other one is that Dundee were, what did Dundee have to play for? Dundee were playing for a place in Europe.
Yeah, they were vying with Rangers for a European spot.
Yeah, they were, they were going into that game at Dens Park knowing that they had an opportunity to finish above one of the old firm, or what used to be known as the old firm. Which is it's no mean feat for a team like Dundee to finish fourth, I think. So I don't think it happened. I don't think the confluence of results happened for them, but they weren't celebrating just beating Hearts and ending their run. They were celebrating the possibility they might have finished fourth, which would have been their highest league finish for years.
Yeah, and it'd been an automatic entry into the UEFA Cup.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're always going to get those kind of conspiracy theories last games of the season when such and such needs a result, and, they get it. Football history is strewn with it, isn't it? Argentina 78 against Peru.
The
one that always got me was Spain's 12-1 win against Malta.
Correct.
To do Holland.
They all get beachfront villas, didn't they?
And it did Holland out of a place at the
Euro
84. Spain ended up going to the final, losing to France. But you have to win by 11 clear, and you're only 2-1 up at half time, having missed a penalty. And you score 8 in jig time. It's like, seriously? Stewart's inquiry, surely, But I always remembered that one, and I thought the Dutch must be utterly spewing. But I think in all of these things, when there's a last minute stuff, it goes down to a last game decider, you're always going to get people who are going to cast aspersions on the results if it goes a particular way. Celtic played like champions for one of the few times that season in that first half against St Mirren, and did what they had to do. So if that's filtering through, the Hearts players would have known that at half time. sugar, Celtic are 4 up.
Yeah.
There's that added element of pressure, because I don't believe when players say we didn't know the score or we weren't aware. They're aware. I don't care what MD says. You know what I mean? Or they're certainly made aware. As you say, there's rumbles in the jungle that tell you that you're aware of what's happening elsewhere. So it's human nature, isn't it? If that comes through, somebody says, by the way, Celtic won for nothing. All right, okay. Well, we're halfway there and it's 0-0. You know, we just need to hold on to this or stick or twist. But that's the spectre of pressure, isn't it? It does strange things to people. But yeah, I mean, as you said there, it's a name synonymous with this title, not so much a Celtic player, Albert Kidd. It's just weird, isn't it? It's like, yeah, people, as you say, there's Albert Kidd Celtic supporters clubs and all that. It's just getting it. I think there's a great quote by Sandy Clark, isn't there, who said he wanted to kick his head in. Not then, but now, since he came out and outed himself as a big Celtic fan and all that.
Well, it was a couple of years later, and I was at the Celtic View, and I also had to produce the matchday programme. And the matchday programme would get printed at the Greenock Telegraph offices, and we're playing Hearts, and it's one of those ones, I swear to God. So the programme, would have to carry the expected teams, which quite often bore no resemblance, because it's the print deadline's on the Wednesday, the game's happening on the Saturday. What's the point in having the teams? But it was a kind of tradition in Matchday Pro. You have to have an approximation. You'd maybe put Celtic from in brackets. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, right, it's Walter Kidd, it's Walter Kidd, it's Walter Kidd, it's Walter Kidd. It's not Albert Kidd, right? It's Walter Kidd, right? And I swear to God, I can't prove this 100%, but it was Walter Kidd in the team lineup by the time it left, my typewriter. Then it gets photo set and under the old technology down at the boys at the Greenock Telegraph. And the matchday programme had Albert Kidd in it. We were playing. It was the first game of that centenary season, and the chairman, Mark Jack McGinn, comes to me and goes, I've never been more embarrassed, right? We're sitting in the boardroom and the Hearts officials, who we have a good relationship with, and they're showing me this. And I said, I'm saying, Jack, I mean, did you not check it? Did you not check it? I'm sure I did. So the Hearts directors were thinking of putting in a complaint. They thought
Wallace Mercer at that time. Would that be?
I think it might. I think he was still there, and I think the feeling was that the official matchday programme at Celtic had put that in to wind them up. I can assure you, I was having nightmares before it, making sure it's not, because I knew what the reaction would be.
You can't draw any other conclusion from
I know.
To be honest, and it doesn't really. And then when you say you're, people are going to say, "Me think you protest too much." You say,
I know.
You're in a no-win situation with that, surely.
Dear, oh dear.
Well, there you have it, Albert Kidd. You couldn't make that up, but clearly you could. But what's your abiding memory of that day, Kevin, seeing as how you were there?
My abiding memory was the roar that went up when the radio began to carry the news that Dundee had opened the scoring. I mean, I know we scored some great goals. But as we were scoring them, you're still thinking, Hearts are going to win. But this is nice. But I'll never forget the feeling when it began to, that wave effect.
Yeah. Ripple.
2 or 3 wee guys with transistors. They let people round about them know By the way, Dundee are a goal up. No, they are. Listen, David Francis saying it. Oh, David Francis said, well, he's the oracle. David Francis doesn't tell lies. And that wave, being part of that wave of utter unexpected euphoria, can now never be repeated, because that's technology of a bygone day.
Yeah.
That was my most vivid memory. Well, that and hugging a half pint of lager, talking about my forthcoming wedding when I should have been basically getting howling with it.
When you should have been up the Alan Hansen or the Kaya Hansen, it wouldn't have been the Wim Jansen back then. It'd have been the Permany, one from the first two. Indeed. But hey, that's been Grand Old Team Episode 8, Love Street 1986 and all that. We'll see you again soon. Take care.